Okay, for people who are joining this live stream, we are looking at some image and video functionality for the next version of Wolfram language. And I had a home internet disaster, so I am at a local office and with different computers and everything, but hopefully things will work okay. All right. Let's see, we are starting off with image and image 3D. Now, I assume, I don't know if my, let me just check something here. So I'm running 12.1, the non-prototype build of 12.1, right?
A prototype build would be better if you have it.
Well, I have something, but I have no idea if it's the right prototype build. I wasn't told I needed that. So we may have to watch somebody else's screen. Let's see whether this is a useful modern prototype build. October 10th prototype build. Is that useful or not?
That's useful. Video is broken in yesterday, today's prototype build anyways. So you couldn't have tried it. But for most
so let's start off with the image with annotation rules. So is there a demo here or what?
Documentation.
I don't know if I can even get to that. I mean, so you're in DocuTools or
yes.
in the product?
DocuTools.
Okay. Okay. So annotation rules. Okay, so what is the right-hand side of annotation rules and where does it say what it is?
If you look at image annotate, you're going to see the syntaxes we would like to support. So it's either going to be a list of regions or a region goes to value. And regions are anything like points, 2D regions, 3D regions for image 3D and so forth.
By the way, that should be italic. The word name should be italic there.
Yep.
I don't understand this. So wait a minute, the right-hand side, so the left-hand side is a name of that tag. So that is the tag name.
Yes.
And the right-hand side is the specification of where that tag is being put. Now, how does that relate to what we're doing for graphs, for how annotation works with graphs?
The annotation rules, the annotation rules specification is similar. There they're called item. The where is an item. You know, here it's a region of interest that says where.
But in the graph case, don't we have the graph annotate? Doesn't it take the graph and
there is
the
no
vertex
graph annotate?
What is it called? What is the thing called? What's it called?
There is annotation value. Annotate.
No. There's also annotate.
There's annotate and there's annotation value.
Okay, so annotate is taking an object specification and name of the annotation arrow value, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is doing something different.
That first case, that means that annotation is at the whole object level.
I understand. So item spec is this one here, right?
That's for some part of it.
Exactly. But so in this case, why isn't this looking like image, comma, item spec as a first argument here, and then name arrow value? I don't understand. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So this what I'm saying is, and as we're trying to extend it to new domains, then people come back and say, this is what we feel is really comfortable and nice for images. And this is what's come back here.
Similar for audio. Graphs and regions have this nice specification or nicer, easier specification of items. This is a vertex, this is an edge, this is a face. For image audio, it's typically a lot easier to specify a region of interest as an interval, bounding box, a specific point, and so forth. And then you typically have a bunch of those. So you want to say my face tag appears in these 5 bounding boxes. That's a more comfortable way of specifying annotations.
Okay, but I don't think this is going to work with these. Okay, so hold on a second. So the basic point is, but I could say for a graph, I want to annotate 1,000 vertices, right? So how do I do that with annotate?
Well, I think that item spec can be a multi, spec thing.
All right. Well, what about the value? In the case of image annotate, why aren't you saying, for example, let's say the tag is dog, but I want some payload, like the probability that that's a dog. You understand what I'm saying? That's not contained in your current image annotate, is it?
The value can be an association. I think that was mentioned.
Which value? There isn't a value here. There's only a name here. There's no value here.
There is a name and spec. Spec can be a row equals to value. So for value, you can specify just the probabilities as numbers
weird.
Or an association.
Okay, I don't believe in this. Okay, let's roll this back a bit. Okay, what you're saying here. Okay, so for annotate, you're saying there is an object. It has a single name value thing associated with it. Okay. For each object, there's a single name value thing associated with it. If you want to multi-annotate, that is, you want a single core object. Okay, so look, to me, this seems like these are incompatible, right? And, to me, if you did something like this, where you said, XXX annotate, and then there's the core object, and then there's essentially the, let's take the simplest case, there's the item spec, and then there's either the single name or there is the payload, which will be name arrow value, right? Although that will do the right thing automatically. It doesn't need the brackets. But then, if you have a multi-item specification, you could say here, item 1, 2, 3 goes to name arrow value, or you could also allow. I don't think you necessarily want listable syntax there.
Well, I think
you get what I'm saying?
Case, that for
I'm
each
sorry?
item, like in that example that you had with probabilities, that each item is going to have a separate value.
Oh, yeah, okay, fine. So actually, there's a very easy way to do that. And by the way, this also dovetails with the way that we need to check that this dovetails. I think this is going to work fine. But there are going to be 2 ways around, depending on whether you're using an association or not. Okay? And it's just like how classify works. You might want to get somebody from, is there anybody who knows the machine learning, the way that classify is set up? Anybody in this meeting who knows that?
As far as the syntax is?
Yes, the syntax.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay, so fine. So then this is the alternative case, right? This is the many items all in the same annotate.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay, so let's walk through what's the other case of graph annotation. Roger, what's the other function that's used in graph annotation in addition to annotate? That is
annotation value.
Okay, fine. So let's look at annotation value. Okay, so now is annotation value also something that works with images? I think not, right? What does that image annotate return?
This one is returning an annotated image, an image that has annotation rules baked into it.
And it's annotation rules as part of the image.
Yes.
Okay, and annotate returns a graph with annotation rules as part of the graph, correct?
That's right.
Okay, all right, fine. Okay, so let's look at, I think we're going to get this, okay? Let's look at annotation value for a second, okay? Okay, so the only thing that's screwy here, I see. So annotation value wants to take, I mean, this item spec name, so we could have annotation value of object and then item spec arrow name. No, and then it's just item spec.
No, I mean, so
well, okay. Equals value, right? So that's one of the cases for annotation value. That what annotation value is pulling out the value object on the right-hand side of the name. So
right.
This case here, where it's just an item spec and a tag, is not really a case covered by annotation value for graphs. Is that correct?
What do you mean by that? I mean, it will return value in that case.
No, what I'm saying is, in the case of an image, you want to tag a piece of an image as Fred or Jane or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So no value. But it's just a list of regions, yes.
Yes. Okay, so what's the analog of that in a graph? You might want to tag certain vertices purely with their tags.
I don't think there hasn't been such an analog. It all had to have some value.
Okay, so I think that there's an argument that there should be the concept of a naked tag, which after all we do have, and this is where, in fact, something that came up yesterday is the analog between, you know, a tagged edge, right? And what's the difference between a tagged edge and an annotated edge? And an edge with annotation rules. See what I'm saying?
Well, the tag better follow along. I mean, it's much tighter integration. Could one, in principle, by forcing you to access everything, but the tag needs to be there very tightly bound.
All right, so let's talk about what a tag is versus what an annotation is. Okay? A tag lives with its host object, in a sense, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
When you do an operation on the graph, the tag for an edge follows along with that edge when the edge is reprocessed in some way for a graph union or whatever else it is, right?
Right.
What happens to the annotation rules? Do they follow along or not?
Well, so that's what we added in 11.3, actually in 12, sorry, which was
12 was
property
calculus of annotation.
Right. That many of them will be now preserved. I mean, most of them will be preserved as you do operations. So there are bad cases.
Right. Okay. So the issue is what we want. So in the case of a vertex in a graph, how do you add in the same way that we have this notion of a tagged edge, right? So here we have an don't we have a tagged? Oh gosh, wait a minute. What
edge tag graph?
Oh, okay. So remind me how that works. That is, I see. Okay, so it's edges with tagging. Okay, so I could say 1 goes to 2, 3 goes to 4, 3 goes to 2, 4 goes to 1, whatever it is, right? Arrow, A, B, C, D, correct? Okay, and if I say there, edge labels, arrow automatic, this is so freaking weird. How do I get just we agreed yesterday that this is not what's going to happen, right?
Right, and your build is from the 10th of October. So causality-wise, this is 10 days before today.
I know.
It probably hasn't been implemented today. So there is a causality problem.
Roger,
Time goes in one direction. Even in
I know that. I know. I'm making these. In fact, one of the things I have to do tonight with the graph system is make causal network graphs, which illustrate precisely that issue and the various deviations from that. But I understand your point.
Good.
Okay. But in any case, the concept here is those tags. So if I look at this structure, I'll see a bunch of tagged edges. Is that correct?
Yeah.
If I were to look at the input form of this,
no.
It's probably.
Oh well, let's. I don't know. Input form can be whatever it wants. Yes, apparently they're there. Yes.
Okay. You know, I've been doing a bunch of stuff with hypergraphs recently, so I actually understand those reasonably well. And we're going to regret this one layer thing here, I think. I think it would have been better to put those in a list, because that will immediately generalize to the hypergraph case.
I think that probably better be a hyper edge or something.
Fine. I mean, is there a good reason why those three things are flat as opposed to a sublist there? I don't feel that strongly about it. I'm just asking the question.
I think that then you need sort of another. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's. No, I mean, I don't think that there's a super good reason to add extra layer of list or not have it.
Okay. Well, all right. Okay. Could we at least raise that with Charles? Is Charles in the not in this meeting? But okay. Can we make sure to raise that, please? So, Andrea, could you make a note of that so we make sure to raise it?
Okay. Yeah, I will tell the next PM then.
Okay, by the way, a question from Brian on our live stream. When will annotations not be preserved? Basically, when the graph has been reprocessed and spat out again in a different form. Right, Roger?
It's complicated. It's when you. I wish I could sort of give you a finite set of rules exactly when.
But I can say one thing. When the thing has been reconstituted, let's say you do a graph intersection, okay? And there's one set of annotations for one place where certain edges are coming from, and another set of annotations for the other place where the edges are coming from. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
One says red, the other says green. What are you going to do?
Yeah, that's exactly the case. Those are exactly the kinds of things where it's not.
Right. So in that case, what we're choosing to do is throw them both away. Is that correct? We're not trying to have a merging of annotations. We're just throwing them away.
That's right.
So let me make a comment about that, okay, which I think is going to come up with other annotations. In the case of associations, we have a whole notion of merging functions, right? Because you've got two associations, and a given key can only support a single value, right? So the question is, what do you do? Right? And there's a notion of merging functions, and I suspect that's what we could have in this case for those more complicated operations.
We know. So we've thought about that, and maybe we should introduce that, but I think it's, at this point, it's overcomplicating something.
I agree, but I think that's where we're going, and as we look at other kinds of annotations for other things, we may want to bear that in mind because they may need that.
Yeah, but I think,
like, for example, if you do an image
audio and image are very far from even trying to preserve any kinds of annotations at this point.
I understand. So when you do an image compose, you blow away all the annotations. True statement?
Apparently, yes.
So if you stitch two images together, what is that operation called? When you have an image and you're just literally putting an image to the right of it or something.
Image assemble.
Okay. Are we getting rid of annotations in image assemble?
Currently, there is no annotation calculus for images and audio. So with any operation, they are removed. But for padding, moving around, assembling, calculus of annotation is trivial. That can be implemented.
I think that would be nice. Right. I think people would appreciate that.
Right.
Let's see. Question from Brian on live stream. Are the rules for the annotation calculus documented?
No.
Roger.
No. I mean, I don't even know how you would document the rules.
Well, I mean, you can say this function does not preserve annotations. This function does.
Yes.
That should surely be documented.
Yes. We should probably add statements to say to what extent annotations are preserved by this operation or that operation.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Sounds sensible to me. Including just a blanket statement, this operation does not preserve annotation rules. And putting that in a bunch of places is fine.
Yeah.
Sandra on our live stream says there should definitely be an annotation merging function, he thinks. He can help us define the calculus for it. I suspect it gets really hairy with graphs. And you know, with because it's going to be what operation are you doing, how are they going to be combined, blah blah blah. So Brian is asking the somewhat interesting question: is there a way to determine which annotations will be discarded, other than just trying it and seeing? I think that's going to be really difficult. I mean, I think this is analogous.
If you want a more detailed discussion, exactly the details of the current annotation calculus, and I wouldn't call it a calculus per se, then I think we should have Charles here.
Why don't we ask Charles to join us? Because I think we're about to change some aspects of the annotation design to merge what's happening with the graphs and images. Could somebody see, Andrea, could you see if Charles can join us?
I can tell him to join.
Okay, so listen, what I'm thinking here is that we're really close, I mean, to having these be mergeable. Let's make them mergeable, right? Between the image annotate, annotation value. See what I'm saying? The main issue, the main difference here is the unvalued tag, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Roger?
Yes.
Which we have an unvalued tag in the case of images, but not in the case of graphs at the current time.
I think that they have been added in the case of graphs, and that Charles can confirm that.
Okay, fine. All right, fine. But then I would propose that this be supported as well as the just like for classify this way round, right? So we get the best of both worlds. We have both a name arrow item spec form and an item spec arrow name form.
Yep.
Okay. And particularly that's useful when you pull out an annotation. Well, actually, hold on a second. This is not so easy because this, look, that's for the tag type thing, but then we've got to have this, right, slightly more exotic creature to represent the value case, right? So in other words, this,
which is the case we already documented for image annotate anyways, right?
Which case?
If,
no.
In the table, if you, that spec can already be a ROI goes to value, which is item spec goes to value in your notebook.
Item spec can be an item spec goes to value. Okay, fine, but that's not in an association. Whereas I'm saying that case goes in an association, whereas this case would be item spec arrow name arrow value.
Mm-hmm.
So Charles, we're trying to make, Charles, are you with us?
Yes.
So we're trying to make, make sure we're compatible between image annotation and graph annotation, okay? And the main point of contention is that in graph annotation, there's this notion of object, comma, item spec in a list. You know, we could support all of these syntaxes, actually.
I mean, there is the same in image, in audio. It's just the way you look at it. The items,
no, that's not correct. The
I
item
mean,
spec is not part. Go ahead.
for image, it's more a region of interest. Audio, they have
No,
like
no, no, no.
loud.
With Charles, we're just talking about the syntax.
Okay.
Okay. The syntax is incompatible. Okay, because what you have for graphs, okay, the graph case, what you have right now for graph is annotate in the object, comma, item. And then you have name, arrow, value, right?
Right.
And so what I'm saying is, what we need to do is make it be the case. And right now, what we have for image is essentially, well, what we almost have is object, and then we have, well, what I'm proposing is we have item, arrow, name, arrow, value for the case that you've described there. Okay. Now we could allow the alternative form annotate, but we got to canonicalize these things in some way. Object, arrow, item, or even exactly the form you have. Object, object, comma, item, and then name, arrow, value. I'm not particularly keen on that, but we could do that. We could allow that as well. I mean, that might be nice, that you can just give a region of interest there. Okay, so Charles, question. In the case of images, we have pure tag annotation, okay? No value as a payload. What is the analog of that in graphs? We clearly have that in edge tagged, in a tagged edge, but what is the analog of the no value tagging?
There is per se no value tagging. If somebody wants to simulate such a thing, he just have to put a default value. So it's roughly equivalent, but we don't support the no tagging value, no tag case, no value case.
I think we should. And you can do that internally by having some, well, I don't care how you do it internally, but what's that?
I mean, sure, but for graph, we never had that case needed.
Well, but I think we need that case. I want to take a graph. I mean, I in fact needed that case just yesterday. Okay, I'm trying to tag. Okay, I've got since Roger brought up causal networks, I have a graph, and I'm trying to tag it with events that correspond. I'm going to tag each vertex with the event that was its creator event and destroyer event. So what you're saying is I should say creator event, arrow, whatever it is. But okay, let's say I only had one of those to tag with. I wouldn't mind being able to just give that as a tag. I mean, the issue is it will be better to have a default name, but to have the value be the tag, so to speak. You see what I'm saying? Rather than to have and similarly for images, it might be better to have a pure tag. I don't know. You get what I'm saying, Shadi, other people?
For images and audio. Yeah, go ahead.
The question is, if you are going to have a pure tag, is it better to say, default tag, arrow, whatever, where the actual nature of the tag, the actual, content of the tag is in the value? Or is it better to spray out lots of names? And Charles has tried to avoid spraying out lots of names, right? And instead said, put all the content in the value. So the analog of that for image would be to say that the case item arrow name is not a real case, right? That item arrow that annotate object item arrow name is actually equivalent to, annotate object item arrow automatic arrow name or something, or default or something like that. Arrow name. You get what I'm saying? Did you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
What's that? I don't. What's that default tag? It seems like you're
Okay,
omitting the
the whole-
value. The value is missing there, right?
No. There's no value missing. This, when I'm saying name, let me put the name in quotes, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because that name is being treated as a value. The thing that you were, let me write tag here, okay? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
That tag, instead of saying I'm going to annotate an image by spraying in an elephant, a rhinoceros, a pig, a chicken, whatever it is, right? As names, I'm going to say those are default tags because I couldn't be bothered. I could equally well have said, animal, arrow, and then chicken, cow, whatever it is, right? You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
But you're saying because I'm being a little bit lazy, I want to use a tag that is an unnamed tag. Do you get what I'm saying?
So we want,
unnamed.
Yeah, I see but then at the same time, we want unnamed tags and then we want valueless tags.
I mean, if I recall correctly.
No, Shadi, that's not correct. There are no valueless tags in this case. All tags have a value, as they do in Charles's system. It's simply the things that you were thinking of as being pure tags, right, that don't have values, are now the values of unnamed tag. Or we could call it tag if you want to, whatever it is, right? That they are the value of tag.
Okay.
Get what I'm saying?
Yep.
Charles, you were going to say something.
Yes, I mean, if I recall correctly, I mean, that was one of the cases where we had a annotate, and the thought was to have some, from the last meeting, have some custom function equivalent to annotate, but which have a more friendly syntax for those different objects, like for audio or image.
I don't care. I don't care. Listen, Charles.
No, this is the
Shadi,
serialization. Okay.
What?
Because also there is annotation rules, where there you do that clear distinction between the name value and the tag, where you store them, in a more efficient way. You don't spray them.
Okay, look. What happened here?
We are probably right.
Yep.
Right. So in the case of a graph, is item name value, and we compress them like that. Where if you look at the case for audio, is a tag form where, right?
It's a name item value.
Values.
Yeah,
right.
it's a name.
Okay, so this is a total mess, guys. Come on, we have to standardize on what.
It's not a mess. It's more that's why an annotation rule is more that option we carry for serialization, which is not per se standard.
All right. Okay. So then let me make a comment about this. Okay. It's just like, okay, if it is purely for serialization, you've got to tag it somehow so that the code that goes in and looks at the annotation rules. Well, I mean, look, we've got tagging rules, which we use in notebooks, which similarly are this kind of cesspool of different structures, right? But, okay, look, what I propose, you can shoot this down, but what I propose is that we standardize on something, I mean, we standardized on something where everything is a name value, is a key value pair, basically. Okay? Now, the default key, we can talk about what that is and whether we need to actually include it, but basically everything is a key value pair. Am I making sense? All annotations are in the form of key value pairs. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I see my case, I agree. That's fine.
Okay, Shadi.
And then we'll have to see where the item specs go, right? So name, annotation name item spec could be the key, or the key is always the annotation name and value is a combination of item spec and value, or a potential value. Because
Let me just, sorry, I'm just... Sorry, just go ahead. What were you saying?
I'm saying, I think the discrepancy here is where we are specifying item specs or region of interest. Sometimes it's stuck with the object, like that annotate case that we have object comma item. And in the image audio case, we are putting it, we are saying name goes to item.
I know. So we have to unify these. Okay.
Right.
We have to unify them, and maybe we have some syntactic, freedom in this thing. Okay. So we've got this principle. So now let's just go through and look at what each one has to do. Okay. And we got to think about annotate, annotation value, and annotation rules. Is that correct? Is there anything else we're thinking about? So it's annotate. Let's see. Annotation value and annotation rules. Is there anything else in that family?
Annotation delete, annotation names.
I'm sorry, annotation names?
Yes.
Are you serious?
You propose that name. It gives the list of the annotation associated to an object. It's probably annotation.
Okay. So given that, we've got to do something with these default name tags, right? They've got to have some name. Okay, fine. That's useful. Okay, so annotation delete is a by name deletion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can it be a
So
by
I'm wondering whether
deletion as well? I think
apparently not.
Charles, I thought we could also delete by item.
Well, you can delete by name globally, or you can have the object item, but
Right.
it's always by name. But I mean, there's the name. You delete an annotation, not the object.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, I am going to suggest possibly renaming annotation names to annotation keys. And having the notion, so let's explore the idea. Okay, question. Could the key value be unified keys? Would you object to that? That is, given a particular item, it has a unique set of keys, right? No key is duplicated.
Yes, and it's
the Is case. That problematic? That's okay as far as you're concerned.
Yes, you have to be unique.
Yep, fine with us as well.
Okay, so fine. So then an annotation could be conceptually an association, right? So we start off with the annotation. Okay, so here's what we're thinking about. So then the annotation is associated with a particular item. Okay, so this is the annotation for a given item. Is an association of that form. Make sense? So then now what we have to say is what. So this gives us a structure. So this is saying that we want to be able to say item, arrow, and then it's a sock there. So then we could say things like plural items, item 1, item 2, arrow, a sock. And that will be a way of saying for these functions like annotate, this item gets this association, right? Does that make sense?
That's not going to be the useful syntax for image audio. You rarely want to have a single position goes to an ASOC, and then you would, unless then you would have
fine.
to just.
So it's this case. It's that case, what you want, right? That's fine. All good. No problem. That will be the typical case for images, right?
Right.
Okay. So now, in the case of annotation value, okay, hold on. Let me think about this for a second. So in the case of annotation value, what you want to get out, you've got the object, you've got the item, and then the value, so then it'll say item arrow key, and that will be what the thing, that will then give a value, right? And possibly if you have a list of items there, it can give a list of values, right? Makes sense? Okay, so now, yes?
I mean, my only case I will object is that it's more convenient to attach the object to the item in our case, especially because
Okay,
it's...
hold on. We're not there yet. I'm not telling you you can't do that yet. Okay? Explain why it's more convenient.
Well, it's more the way you actually think about it. It's, is the following at, an item, a vertex of a graph, and then you want the given association, but you don't essentially disassociate the graph and the item. And especially that since when we introduced those proper to annotation at the time, right, we didn't have association. So in those cases, you are essentially writing a list of rules. And it was kind of odd to have item key, and then also you have the key value.
All right, well, that's the past. We're now rebuilding, because there's not called property anymore. It's called annotation, so we can do whatever we want. Right?
Sure.
Okay. So the issue is whether something like that makes any sense. Then we might be able to support that. I don't know whether you want it to be listable with respect to objects. Do you?
I don't think that's necessary for all cases.
Yes.
The one thing that puzzles me is that how are we going to deal with items that are intersecting with the actual items that are stored in image audio annotations? So you may have a bounding box. If you get a point that lands on that bounding box, should that bounding box be returned? Or no, things like that, I'm not sure how they're going.
I don't know what you're talking about. Why does that relate to this? This is the syntax of annotations.
Yep.
Okay, that's a different issue.
Well, we are extracting annotation values. Yeah, that's a separate issue. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We can discuss that separately.
Okay, so that form or the list form, we have to decide between those, right? But I don't see any reason we can't support that. Makes sense, Charles? That is essentially exactly what you have now, is this form here, right?
Yes.
Okay, now let's look at annotate. Okay, so annotate in the second form would be key arrow value, which is what you have right now, right? Yes. But we are proposing that we also allow annotate object item arrow key arrow value, right? Or that we're allowing annotate object, well, so there are various forms here. That, comma, a sock, which is multi-key. See what I'm saying? Annotate, let's see, what would it be? Object, comma, yeah, item, arrow, a sock. Right, those would both work. Am I making sense? Yes, you understand?
Yes.
Okay, so the one thing we're not covering here is, so I think this covers everything, I think. I have to work it through. Okay, so annotation rules would then canonicalize okay, by the way, annotation keys, you'd be able to say object arrow item, or you'd be able to say keys object comma item, presumably. It's a little weird that both of those work, but then okay, yeah, that makes sense.
There is a case which we have, when those are at the object level itself and not in some part of it. So it's a global property, they're not on some part. Like for the whole graph as opposed to some vertex or edge. And so right now, if you look at annotate, that says basically annotate object name value. So that's kind of at the global level.
Okay, well, let me point out how you could do that here.
We could use we could call it self if we want to.
No. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do it. It works just fine with just that. That's not an ambiguous syntax.
Sure. Yeah.
The way I've been thinking about it is that meta information is the option that stores global metadata. Annotation rules is the local stuff that has item spec or region of interest.
That's not how it works with graphs. So they both the global and the local.
Well, it's
okay.
Yes and no, right? I mean, there is that ambiguity that we have what we call standard annotation, right, which are objects associated to attach to the the option attached to the object, right? So.
Okay, what would happen if annotation rules canonicalize to an item arrow or sock form? Is that bad? Is that good? Does anybody object to that?
It's fine for graph. I think the issue is for other objects, is the way you are going to store it. It may be inefficient in terms of storage.
Okay, Shadi, that's for you.
It's also going to be inefficient for images. Well, what this means...
So wait. There's no also. Charles said it was fine for graphs. But he said it might not be fine for other things.
I'm also thinking, how about vertex, something like vertex style? You're going to have one goes to, and then all of those ASOCs are going to have vertex style goes to something. That's also not efficient. And
okay, fine. All right, okay. So then this could be, I mean,
yeah, those keys are going to be repeated a zillion times.
Mm-hmm.
No, it have to be handled per object. In graph, we can store it. If it's vertex, the way you store vertex style is not the same as you store vertex coordinate, right? The vertex coordinate are pack structure in some cases, or most of the cases, the machine stuff. You store them differently.
Yeah.
That's right. So.
Okay, fine. So store it this way. Store it like that. That's consistent with what we're doing up here, right? That's the item arrow ASOC form. And in this form here, we should be able to say item 1, item 2 arrow ASOC. So like Brian is commenting on the live stream, that if you wanted to annotate every MNIST image as being an 8 or something, you could do that like this.
The thing I don't think would be easy is how would I annotate all faces with approximated age of that face?
I don't understand. Why is that hard?
My items are going to be a bunch of bounding rectangles. And then the key is going to be age or facial age. And the values are going to be different. So I have to specify separate item goes to age goes to value.
You're not going to have any choice. You've got two different things that are varying, right?
Yep.
So the only thing you would be able to do is if you wanted to have something that says age arrow, you want to have a different way round. So this is analogous to image interleaving, right? In image interleaving, right? Sometimes you want it one way, sometimes you want it the other way.
Exactly.
So talk about how that's worked out for image processing. How do we deal with that?
For interleaving, we have the option in the image object.
Okay. So one could imagine, I mean, unfortunately here, one could imagine that the annotation rules could be stored in a different form if they were tagged appropriately, right? So you've got these different forms. You could say age arrow, and then you've got item 1 arrow blah, item 2 arrow blah, right? So
Correct.
you're saying that all possible factorings of this make sense. Am I making sense? All possible factorings of the annotation rules, all possible, column row orderings, etc. Right. By the way, Brian is suggesting on a live stream, and I agree, that the way to pull up the whole object annotation is just annotation value, and that may already work. Annotation value of object pulls up the whole object annotation, right? That makes sense?
It could alternatively return all of the annotations associated to all of the items.
But what is the whole object annotation? We have to define what is annotation, right? Is it, in the case of a graph, is it a vertex style, or is it just annotation given by the user?
I don't know.
No, I think if it's whole object, there's nothing that can be broken down onto the parts.
No, but what I mean is that
well, it's an inheritance question of whether vertex style on the whole object is inherited by the parts or not.
Right, and
right.
And if somebody specify a graph vertex goes to red, do I have to instantiate it for every single vertex?
No, hopefully not. I mean, you don't right now, do you?
No, we don't.
Okay, so question. Is annotation rules a user visible thing? In other words, could we store a bunch of crud in annotation rules that is optimized for column ordering, row ordering, whatever, and not have the user have to worry about it?
In the plan of graph, it was the case that no. The only time we use annotation rule was essentially for the inheritance.
And serialization.
And serialization.
Okay, so then I've got a proposal. Let's put
but for image
the annotation rules.
For image audio, so far it's been a visible. Well, with audio, it's been released and it's a visible option. It gets stored.
No, it was still visible.
It's visible.
It was visible in that sense, but it wasn't promoted as something that you would mess with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. So what we could have is, in principle, annotation rules could look like this at the top level, and you can optimize it however you want. Right?
Right, depending on the object and the way we want to store it, and if we want to document
it. So long as we have converters, which we could easily do between, let's say we have 3 storage schemes, and we have converters between those storage schemes, and if somebody put it in a different storage scheme, you can convert it when you need to ingest it for something. It's all good. I mean, in a sense, this is very similar to the issue for dataset about column-oriented storage for dataset. And I don't know what we're doing there. I think there is a plan for that, and you should understand what that is. So that's a Chris Carlson issue, I think. Do any of you know what the story is there?
No.
Okay, so Andrea, that's another thing has to be connected here. So maybe Shadi, you could interact with Chris and whoever else is dealing with that issue.
Okay.
You understand the issue? I mean, maybe Jose knows about that. The issue is that there's an inefficiency right now, the exact same reason you're bringing up here. In data set, if the data set consists of a list of identical associations, that's a waste of storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a big waste of storage, it's just a pointer for each thing. But, okay.
But the other thing is that you're also likely to get kind of sparse.
Yeah, that's come to my point. Like in the case of graph, I don't see how we are going to document because the way we store vertex style and vertex coordinate are different. In mesh, the way we store markers are different than the way we store information about each polygon. So
okay,
we cannot...
listen, Charles. So what you're saying is you are just putting non-user understandable stuff into annotation rules in these cases. Is that correct?
It's user understandable if we want to document it. But we just choose.
No, I'm not sure that we do. I'm not sure we do. I mean, it could just be something, but that's why.
And no one actually asked that for how many years? I mean,
what's that?
I mean, for, I don't know, more than 5 years now we release graph, no one actually requested to manipulate them because from the constructor of the graph, you don't really need to go and dig inside the object for that.
I understand that. So maybe we need to make it an opaque object that's an annotation rules object. That's possible. That just prints as some nice blob and and really is opaque. You see what I'm saying? So the storage is there. We do it in a way that's good for us, and we don't worry the poor user with how it works. I think that would be perfectly acceptable. Shadi, any objection to that idea?
That would be fine for us because we are storing everything under annotation rules.
Okay, Roger, your comments.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has been a problem what we've had so far.
No, I understand that. So we either can have something which is a mess and undocumented, or we can actually hide it inside an opaque object. I don't really care about those two possibilities.
Yeah, I mean,
annotation rules is not intended to be an end-user modifiable or understandable thing.
Right, just like sparse array. If you look at its full form,
it's full of gunk.
Right, I mean, you can if you really commit it, you can understand it, but it's also likely to change. In which case, you'll be host.
Okay, but if we think this might change, we should have a versioning. We should have it inside an opaque object, and we should have versioning information in it.
Yeah.
I would sort of prefer the opaque object. And I think it might be useful for other purposes anyway. Okay, so let's loop back here. So, I mean, I think we've got at least much of a plan here. I think it would be worthwhile to go through this. I mean, I may have missed some cases here, but I think we've got something reasonably nice here. Anybody object?
Just one thing to confirm. Currently, graphs and meshes put a lot of the specified annotations under other options. This opaque object, is that really going to work in those cases?
Say that again?
Like things like the vertex styles that get stored actually under the vertex style option. Those are not going to be included in the annotation rules object. Those are going elsewhere currently. Are we planning to keep them all together or no?
So we had the notion of standard annotations.
Right.
Which are basically like options to the object itself. Those are the things that are well supported. But the other important case is sort of user created ones, whatever you want to call them.
I know, but Shadi is asking, do you pull the vertex style into the annotation rules object or not?
Yeah, I kind of think not, but
it will be outside. It will not be inside annotation rule. Same for vertex coordinate and all anything which is a
fine. That's
option
fine.
of graph.
It's okay. I don't think so. Those are simply not annotations. You're asking what are annotations? Those are not annotations.
No, those are special annotation. They're
The
kind of
standard.
No,
we call
no,
them
no,
standard
no,
annotations.
no. I don't think you should say that. I think that will just confuse people.
But the problem
I think
is,
you should say those are not annotations.
okay. What would we call them then?
People have never been confused. We documented
No,
them for 5
never
years.
been confused.
Okay, so are you
Options have
saying
to be
that
attached to
annotation value?
symbols.
Wait a second. So annotation value is capable of handling vertex style.
Exactly.
You're saying
Because it's an annotation.
Yes. Yesterday you did a demo with that, right?
Yeah, you
Annotation
did.
I know that. I know that. All right. So annotation rules. Okay. Let me make a suggestion then. Annotation rules has essentially an automatic tentacle, which just says, in effect, oh, and by the way, also pull in all the things that just come from options. I mean, then we're okay. Then we're conceptually fine. Am I making sense?
Yep. Annotation value, not annotation rules, because all of those standard ones are not stored under annotation rules.
No. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying annotation rules, because it does not contain the vertex style, what it has to do is to include by reference things like vertex style. Okay? The concept is, here's the flow. Annotation value looks at annotation rules. That's the official documented behavior. Okay? Annotation value is digging into annotation rules. Okay? But annotation rules is saying, but I'm also referencing the standard annotations. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm automatically including the standard annotations.
They say annotation value doesn't refer to annotation rules because, like in the case
I know, but okay, listen. Annotation value, the answer would say annotation value gets annotations from annotation rules. Okay, you say bleat bleat, what about vertex style, right? I say annotation rules has an automatic or something case which automatically pulls in the standard annotations. You see what I'm saying? That's the conceptual flow. So for other functions, if they want something, I mean, annotation rules has an automatic case which automatically pulls in and might list them, and might actually list them, i.e., vertex style, whatever else. Right? So in other words, in the annotation rules object, it would say, sort of conceptually, kind of local data, local rules, and then it might say the list of its standard annotations. You see what I'm saying? Blah, blah, blah. Okay? And here it might say something like specific rules or something. Whatever it is. Key value. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So then conceptually, what we're saying is, it all goes through annotation rules, but annotation rules pulls in certain standard annotations by default. Now, nobody will ever mess with this, but in principle, you could change that and say, actually, I don't want vertex style as part of the standard annotations, although nobody will ever do that. Does that make sense to people?
yes.
I quite like this. I think this design is getting there. Okay, so with this design, there is no need for image annotate. It's gone. Correct?
The one thing that may be useful is the futurized note that I have in there. shortcut for adding some annotations, some named annotations.
Okay. Okay, I agree that would be useful. So in principle, image annotate could be a slightly more ergonomic version of annotate that happens to have some shortcuts for images.
Right.
But conceptually, it would work exactly the same as all these other ones.
Right.
So it would allow things like, I mean, you know, in principle, we might want image annotate, and we could say of an image, and what you have in mind is things like faces, arrow, ages.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree that that might be useful to have an image annotate as a separate thing, while supporting the syntax of annotate, but maybe, or maybe not. Maybe it's just those custom annotations that are available there.
Correct.
So Brian on the live stream asked another question, which is a bulk removal of annotations. So for example, like just blow away all annotations. How do you do that? So I think that will be part of annotation delete. Okay, so let's look at that case. Did we look at that here? Okay, so annotation delete of an object would presumably blow away all the annotations of the object. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that what it does?
Standard annotation?
So again,
Yeah, what the standard annotation are initialized to automatic or the default value.
if you say annotation delete.
Yes. So if it's a standard annotation like vertex style, is reset to automatic in our case.
Okay, all right. So then the only other case is the deletion. What is the second argument? What you have here is the key, basically, is the second argument. And what that means is, so let's be clear about what that means, because what that really means, that's one case. The other one here would be all arrow key. Okay, that's the equivalent of this. That is equivalent to all arrow key. And the alternative is to say item arrow key or a list of items. Am I making sense?
Yes.
So what you don't get there is, okay, so let's just walk through this for a second, because the next case would be item arrow key or item arrow all, which means delete, or blank, which means delete every annotation associated with that item. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, there's one last thing we need to handle here, which is default annotation, right? Do we have, so Shardy wants purely a tag without a key, purely a value without a key, right?
No.
Or she could say a key without a value. Yes.
Yeah.
Key without a value.
Okay. Whatever you want. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you're saying there, because either one is messy. Okay, so you say, okay, all right, so this is the case, keys without values. What happens? All right, so let's take a look at some of these syntaxes. So I suppose we could have annotate object this is going to be ambiguous. It's going to be ambiguous, okay? We've got object arrow item and then just a naked key. Okay, but we can't have key arrow value there because that's ambiguous. Oh, we don't need a key arrow value because it has no value. I'm sorry, we can't have item arrow value because that's ambiguous. See what I'm saying?
Right. But object arrow item, comma key, like what you have there,
Hold on.
just works.
Yeah,
And that's enough
fine.
for what we
Can't have, okay, wait a minute. We can't have can't have this. Annotate object item arrow key, because it's ambiguous with versus key arrow value. Now notice that the key arrow value is actually a shorthand for an association there. But if we allow that shorthand, we can't have item arrow key. I don't think that's devastating. Okay, now, if you were to extract the key value association in this case, what would you see? Because an association can't have a naked key. So it would have to be key arrow automatic, probably, for the default key. Right? And finding, this is why I'm not certain that you're right, that you want it to be a key, because finding the default tag is a mess. I mean, it would be anywhere a mess. You'd have to know its name. If you've got several named tags that are, where the names are meaningful, and you've got this one, well, I mean, you can always do it by convention the other way around. I think that's okay. If you really want to do it this way, that's okay. Although how you know that that's the default key, I have no idea. How you know that's the default key as opposed to a key that happens to have value automatic. So I bet you're going to need a function that is the key present? You see what I'm saying? Does it have a given key? Does a particular thing?
We can do annotation value return missing, not existing, not applicable, something sensible.
Well, actually, missing key. Annotation value goes to missing key absent, I think is the term.
Oh, okay.
What's that?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, for an association, there is a similar concept, right? For an association, there's the concept of how you test whether a particular key exists. Key member queue, I think. Key exists queue. Right, so it'd be very good. Okay, so it will be key exists queue of annotation value of object, comma. Let me just see if I can understand what to do here. Okay, all right, so it's this. It's key exists queue of that. Would tell you whether, so it will retrieve the whole association for that annotation, for that item in the object, and then it will do a key exists queue on that. That makes sense? Brian is suggesting the slightly wild idea of using the object itself as the value in the default key case. I don't really believe in that. I think that's fraught with horror of, oh, there happens to be a, you can't tell because that identity is not, it might be a coincidental identity. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this design. Can you guys try and work it through and see what corners there are?
Yep.
And let's try and look at it again next week if we can. Okay. Try to understand what might be the issues. Okay, so let's loop back here. I think we should keep going a bit. We'll try to get some. I don't know exactly when I'm going to have to leave here, but we can try and get some. I mean, I know you've got quite a bit of stuff here, so let's take a look at more of. I mean, that was a bit of a bump, but I think we're through it. Roger, are you happy?
I think that this is okay. It's sort of begged for this, more thorough work through. I thought that we would launch one as experimental, and then we could have a more sensible discussion. But this.
I think this is pretty good. I think what we've got in this design is quite good. I don't think it's going to. I don't think there's a lot of holes here.
Well,
we'll see.
I mean, actual use makes a big difference.
I understand, but this is why I think we should implement basically this, and it's really just cosmetic changes to what we have and take it from there.
Sure.
Okay.
Just before we move on, we have had an audio annotation lookup, and then we are similarly developing image annotation lookup, which...
What does it mean?
It's more like annotation value, and I think maybe we can go without a lookup function. But one thing we have been seeing in a lookup function is to combine or process the annotations as we go as well. So either format them, combine them, compute something on it, and so forth. Unnecessary for the first phase if you think that's going to complicate the design of the whole
I don't see the point. I mean, the lookup function that we have, the generic lookup function does not do that. So I don't understand how something called annotation lookup makes any sense for doing that. See, it just does that.
Yep.
What it has is the possibility of default if the key is not found, which is quite useful. Right, and that might be useful for an annotation lookup as well, but I wouldn't put that in at the beginning. I would just have an annotation value.
Okay.
Okay. So what else for okay, so now we should look at highlight image. So what's new here? 12.1.
A few things. The default color has changed. Labeling and legending with association.
Well, in what way has the default color changed?
It used to be pink, and some people don't think that's an error message.
And then scroll down, it's now.
So remember, that's been many people have complained about that.
So it's gone to this more bluish color.
Magenta.
Seems like a good color to me.
Yep.
Magenta, thank you. Yeah.
Purple or magenta. Yeah.
Looks good. Okay, image labels. Wow, how does that relate to vertex labels?
No, it's more related to plot labels type thing.
Exactly.
Why
so
is
this is for labeling and legending. If you're highlighting corners and key points with two different colors, and you want to get either labels for them or legends for them, these are going to be used.
Yes.
There should be examples if you scroll down. Both under scope, labeling and legending there. And there is work to be done to get scrims for those labels and then placement.
Well, that's nice. That's a nice thing there.
Yep. And I think the next
That's
one.
cool. So then does it also work with call out as well as labeled?
No.
Should
but
do.
I think that, should get added.
And legended should work.
It works.
And we didn't implement scrims here, Shadi.
What is a scrim? What is a scrim?
Scrim is when it's sort of half transparent, invented for smartphones because they're tight on real estate. The problem with it's that it covers everything. A little bit of see-through goes a long way for comprehension. So we use scrims all the way.
And we should do that here too, obviously.
Definitely, yeah.
Which I'm sure you can do with image processing, right? But this is really nice. I really like this concept of labeled in an image. That's really cool.
And then legended.
Okay, and legended.
Right.
Cool.
Definitely useful.
I see. So this, let me understand this. So this, like vertex labels, I'm a little confused here. Okay, help me out. So Vertex Labels requires the name of the vertex on the left-hand side in a set of rules, correct, Charles?
Yes.
Okay. In this case, you are simply having a sequential list of graphics, geometric objects, and then you're sort of threading in that same list of labels, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm
Right,
looking at this. I'm not even sure if you need to support this or if it would be very useful to support that. In this particular
I think
case,
it's pretty marginal. I mean, I think the labeled thing is very useful. I think this is kind of marginal, and I wouldn't do this.
Okay.
I mean, not initially. I would consider this, but I wouldn't necessarily do it.
Yep, I agree. One other useful addition, if you scroll a bit more up, in the syntax specification, region of interest, the label goes to region of interest. That first table, see the 12.1 plus, is similar to what image contents return. And this can automatically do labeling and legending and so forth. Okay,
but that you might need an image labels for to say what to do.
It's automatic expressions or none. Yep.
What is?
The settings for image labels, image legends.
So so you're not proposing to get rid of the image labels. You're proposing to leave the image. Okay, so let me make a suggestion then. The list form of image labels could do that sequential list thing. There can be an association form of image labels, which says, given the particular label, right?
I
here.
see.
So presumably, given a label here that says tiger, there could be a list of regions of interest for tigers here.
Yep.
Okay. So then what you would do with image labels is you'd say association, tiger, arrow, whatever, red or something.
Right.
I think that would work fine. That's what I would propose, since you're going to need image labels anyway.
Yeah.
So in principle, you could end up with labels and legends. So you could set both labels and legends to automatic, in which case both would show up, correct?
Correct.
Okay. There's some nice functionality here. Very useful. Okay, what's an image assemble?
This was a very simple function and used to fail for any non-conformed set of images. Now we are becoming a bit more forgiving with different color spaces, bit depths, and things like that. We're also adding spacings and some other options.
So are you adding fill-in as well? I
Yes.
mean, that is if the thing doesn't. Okay.
We can fill, fit, scratch.
Is there a fitting option? Is there an option for fitting in other places?
No, this fitting argument also is available in image collage. That's where we got this from. I don't think we have an option like that, at least not in image processing.
No, you can't. Spacings, is that an option that we... Oh, it is. Okay, I'm wrong. Great. Looks nice. Spacings. So in other words, spacings defaults to 0.
Correct.
And what does it look like? It looks like some kind of weird window framey thing.
Yeah, it just adds padding in between. Scroll down to options, spacings. That's the background color, which is used both for padding around or padding in between the spacings.
Okay, that's nice enough. Looks nice. Okay, image transformation. What's happened there?
It's just faster transforms for now. But we do like
What's that? What's nonlinear transformation function?
No, that's
not for now.
that's
Needs
future.
more work before we bring that up.
That sounds like it's a general kind of thing.
It is. That's why it needs more work.
Okay. So this it's simply a speed increase. There's no functionality change. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Brian on our live stream is pointing out that you'd mentioned, Shadi, that image assemble strips annotations, but if the individual images don't overlap, why delete them? It's a question being asked. And I agree with that. Assemble doesn't need to. I mean, image compose, good luck. But image assemble, I don't see why you shouldn't leave the regions of interest with the, with the annotations intact.
Right. With the shifted positions and all of that in the new, so that there is at least some minimal calculus that has to happen.
Hi, sorry. Okay. What were you saying here? By the way, we're having the people from the next meeting, which I think includes Charles, join this one. Although we might want to, for the sake of the live stream, keeping that, well, it's okay. It's all right. We'll survive. We'll see how long we have to go in this one. Okay. All right. Next up, face align. That's a new function, right?
Correct.
There's a certain ambiguity between human faces and polyhedral faces.
Haha.
The Nicola on our live stream is looking forward to nonlinear transformations for images. Okay, face align. I see. This is face forward, so to speak. Is that right?
Not face forward, but eyes and typically it's eyes and nose or eyes and nose and mouth aligned. There is no 3D transform.
What do you mean by aligned? I mean, so I don't understand this.
So that the eyes are on top of each other, nose, mouth are on top of each other. It's generally useful for any kind of recognition or morphing and things like that.
I'm totally confused. What is this doing? Let's take a look.
It sticks the eyes and nose in the same places. They're aligned.
It's amazing. There's a certain random contingency of biological evolution that wound us up with, 2 eyes and a nose in more or less that configuration. And the fact that now that becomes essentially a coordinate system is really kind of amusing. But anyway, never mind. Were we to be a different species, if the turtles had ruled the earth, so to speak, we'd be doing a very different, there'd be some weird thing with the center scale would be, never mind. I'm not going to get into kind of, what is it, the shape-shifting lizards theory? Never mind. Okay, so what is this? So this is basically, there's a triangle of eyes, 2 eyes and a nose type thing. Is that the idea?
Yep. Or you can specify more landmarks to align and different transformation classes to align. Is this a prototype build still?
I don't know. I'd like to look at this a little bit. This is a complicated function. I mean, I'm not quite sure what. So this is simply taking, according to the reference face ref, so line space of the specified size. Why isn't that just an image size option? What is the size argument? That's really weird. Why isn't that an image size?
Image
Everywhere
size
else,
has
that would be
always
an
been
image
a
size.
display size for images.
Oh,
And
that's the size of the face?
That's the size of the dimensions, pixel dimensions of the image that comes back.
Okay, so what's the analog of this? If you look at image trim or something, how is that specifying the size of the final image?
We have it, image trim, you give it a bunch of points or regions and trims around it, returning it. There is no choice of resulting image size. But for instance, image transformation has it. And we are using this size argument. Image rotate has it. We have a size argument.
All right. What's the analog of image trim that just says make this image such and such a size?
Image resize?
Yeah, okay. And you're going to say that does the same thing?
Yep.
Okay. Does this have a width only
Yes.
setting? Oh boy. Okay, so these are also image key points that you can pick out for faces, right?
Correct. Those are new. Those are single point facial features that we are adding in this release in facial features as well. We only used to have list of point for eyes,
what do you
nose,
mean?
mouth. If you open facial features in 12, it didn't have that set of key points. And we are introducing that in 12.1. That's the tentative table.
I see. So left eyebrow points will be multiple points, whereas this is left eye center.
Center of those points.
And so we don't have left eye.
Left point.
Yeah. So we have mouth left, mouth right. Since we happen to be a species with a single mouth, that's
Yes.
enough.
Roger made exactly
Oh my
the same
God.
comment.
Fair enough. Boy, this is really, we're not, species equality is out the window here. But it's prejudiced by our customer base.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just thinking, if we were doing this for cats, it would be whisker left extent and so on. Upper whisker. What are those things called above the cat? What are those things at the top called? They're not called whiskers. I don't know what they're called. Okay. Bounding whisker. Never mind. Okay, fair enough. All right, facial features. Okay, you're simply updating. What's this aligned image property?
That's for fine faces. Since we have face align.
I see. Okay, so that's face align, and then this is aligned image. I see, which is the face align output for the face.
Correct.
Nice. Okay. All right, good. Okay, video. Oh, by the way, Nicola on the live stream is asking, is FaceAlign applying an affine transformation or a nonlinear transformation?
It has a transformation class option. There is no there is no nonlinear transformation function yet in the system. Once we have more advanced things like radial basis, that's also going to be supported. That's the very last table, I think, in FaceAlign.
So those are, almost all of them are affine, except perspective is linear fractional.
And what uses transformation class?
Image align, find geometric transform, image corresponding.
Has it been around? Has this been around for a while, or is this new?
No,
It's been around for since 10.
It's an awful name. I wish it had been called geometric transformation class. Well, I guess we haven't had a collision yet. Okay, I didn't know that was the thing. All right, onward, video.
That's not
exciting.
Yeah. That's not 12. That's not going to be 12.1. That's the release strategy for 12.1. So most of the things you see in that section is going to be post 12.1.
So wait a minute. Move the following video processing features to video. Will be there. Okay. So wait a minute. So what is going to be there?
The import-export functions down below in a slightly limited fashion, because they also require the video object to be really useful all the way.
Yeah. Very much earlier in this session, Brian on the live stream was asking, why aren't we supporting Microsoft WMA audio and WMV video formats? That's a Windows Media formats, right?
Yep, I'm aware. The current list of updated video, which is a very large list, is not going to support them. If we find good solutions
is or is
for
not?
them, is not.
Is that an issue with licensing, or is that what is that?
Yeah, with the backends we're using, FFmpeg and the OS decoders and coders. But that's on the radar. We'll get to it if we can support them.
Okay. We might have some friends to talk to about how to get that to work.
Okay.
Okay. What on earth is Matroska? I vaguely heard of that. What is that? Just an odd name for format. What is it?
That's MKV. You may have seen that.
What's it used for?
That's a very flexible format. It can support very many. Or
what does the name? What does the word mean? It sounds Russian somehow. What's that?
I don't know.
Well, Matroska dolls are those dolls that fit within dolls.
Okay. Oh well, maybe that's the name. It's named after those. Okay. Yeah, somebody on the live stream is pointing out that in our examples we should probably have some ethnically different faces, which surely we can get for our examples, and we should also check. I assume it works. I think faces are happily pretty easy to deal with. They're not. There are other things that are much harder to deal with, but I think they're, faces, eyes, nose, mouth are all recognizable. That's a minor issue for the stock photography we're using, Shoddy. Okay. So what will we have?
Check dollar video decoders and dollar video encoders in your system. That's going to give you the list of containers and all of the supported decoders and encoders. prototype build.
My gosh. Okay.
Well,
So there's a
check
bunch of
keys
stuff
of
here.
that. Check keys.
What's that?
Keys of that dollar video decoder. That's going to be the containers. But for each one of them,
What
there
is
are so
video?
many. It has to be video format. I don't know why it says video. We are passing anything that we think may be a video file to FFmpeg and see if it can decode it.
Okay. What a mess. What do the streaming video services use? Do they flip around depending on what the with some QoS stuff and things? Or what do they do? Do you know? I mean, like whatever logarithm, like what uses that? I mean, is it some random? I mean, are these different parameter spaces in terms of packet loss versus this versus that, or what? Why are there so many of these?
I haven't checked the history of all of them, but you actually find files under those encodings. As far as what the streaming services use, I think they canonicalize most of them. MP4s are the most common ones.
Just think, if we'd lived in different times, Betamax would have survived as well as VHS. Did anybody even get that? Roger gets that.
Yeah.
I mean, because the fact that there's so many of these that can coexist is remarkable to me. The fact that there isn't an economy of scale and, one format winning out is surprising. Okay.
There sort of is some kind of ongoing competition. Like Google has been trying to launch license-free video formats for some time, but somehow the H261 consortium with their patents seem to have enough momentum that they didn't topple it, at least not yet. If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I just don't understand the diversity here. Because I mean, like for example, for us, do we know properties of these things? Like, okay, let me ask a question. Each one of these formats presumably has, like we could imagine in our knowledge base having data about these different formats. Like, for example, I mean, it's just like, do they live in, is there a 5-parameter space? And these things are optimizing different things in that space. I mean, there are a lot more of these than there are image formats that anybody cares about, right? I mean, image formats these days, there are like 2 or 3 that people care about, aren't there? Unless something like TIFF is like a meta format.
Mm-hmm.
Which it is.
Right. Okay, in any case, all right, fine. So what do we then, what is the plan here? So first question is, why are we not getting a video? We're not getting a video player in the desktop front end? Or what's the deal with that?
Right. So,
and is that getting nearer, or is that still far away?
No, it's pretty near, but I think that the high DPI thing sort of consumed the bandwidth that they had. And
John is here.
John is here. Great.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's being worked on, but basically, we're. There are things that are sequentialized here. There are things that we have to finish before, before Shadi's team can really begin a certain set of tasks, and we're trying to finish that stuff on a 12/1 time frame so that they can have most of the following release to work on it.
Okay, but so what you're delivering then is from a file on the desktop machine. You're delivering the analog of our audio player for video. Is that correct?
Well, I'm delivering something much more powerful, which is library link for the front end. But then Shadi will be able to use that to deliver what you're talking about.
Yep.
So what is the iframing of stuff through Library Link or whatever it is in the front end?
It's not going to be iframing. I don't 100% know for certain how we're going to do this, but I mean, you know, the most primitive scenario would work decently, which is to say, just have the Library Link stuff send us bitmaps. But the point being that it can all be done, you know, in process, you know, with shared memory, and that the in process stuff can be doing the decoding as well.
So I mean,
that way we might come up with something better than that. But I think even that would give us really quite a lot.
Okay, so then I'm going to ask the obvious question: could we be running a web browser inside that? Given that you have Library Links spraying
well,
to the front end.
Well, so I mean, the easier thing about a video player is that the communication is comparatively one way, right?
I understand, as opposed to having an image map where it's having to respond to clicks.
Yeah, I mean, when we did the web browser plugin for Mac OS, where we were very limited on the kinds of, you know, exchanges that we could do, I mean, what we did was absolutely crazy. What we did was we actually communicated bitmaps over WSDP. But then that wasn't even the hard part. That was just the wow, I can't believe it works part. But the hard part was dealing with all of the event handling, mouse clicks, keystrokes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. But so that's the issue here. Is then okay, so this is a one-way Library Link. This is spraying bitmaps at the front end, basically.
Well, I mean, it's not that there can't be any interaction. It's that, you know, the interaction is, you know, kind of, you know, build it yourself, and that, you know, can get arbitrarily complex. But, you know, we'll make decisions about what we want to actually try and ship. So
okay, all right, okay. So that's necessary to be able to play the video in the front end, but processing video has nothing to do with that, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, in other words, if you were to take that file and process it and click on an external video player, you know, that would be just fine. You could just see that file be processed externally, correct? So a lot of your functions could still work.
Yes.
Okay, so the video object points to the video file. Okay, displayed as a video player, except that won't work yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, video filter. Wow. Okay.
Those 4 function names are just a placeholder.
Okay, but video map. So what you're essentially saying is, show me the position of the tiger in every frame, return. So it's like file system map, but it's across video frames. So this is video frame map, effectively. It's mapping across video frames. And in general, you might want to do something where you subsample or you combine frames before you actually do the processing.
Yep.
Okay. So then a typical thing there, I see, is you get back a time series, which is, do videos have an sort of metadata that gives, I mean, some videos presumably have absolute time metadata, but most videos just have relative to the beginning of the video metadata. I mean, if you've got video from some random security camera, it probably has, I don't know whether there's a standard for this, it probably has an absolute time EXIF-like thing. Is that true?
Yeah, there are extended version of EXIF. I think we discussed it last time. I've seen GoPro, for instance, documenting their extended EXIF so that the metadata is time resolved. For each time, you can store specific metadata.
Right.
I think at this point, this is really a moving target. It's a new need that is being standardized or even developed, not even close to being standardized.
Sorry. Okay. So, but so does any of this stuff work now?
They were
Oh, and by the way,
added this
go ahead.
week. So they were added this week, and video is broken in today's prototype. So no prototype has these working, but I'm guessing very soon they're going to be working. Yes.
Cool. Okay, so we do have to work on the design for these, because this would be perfectly reasonable to take. I mean, a video frame map or whatever it is, whatever we call it, video time series map or something. I don't know what the right name for it is, but that's something that can perfectly well work in 12.1. You give it a video as a file, and and then it can return that digest of the video based on those things.
Yeah, I guess the discussion Roger and I had is that going to be sufficient to have well, how encouraging or discouraging would it be to have video objects without a video player built in? So with every operation, people have to check their result outside of our system.
Well, not necessarily. If they're just processing something and getting back some digest result, they can be happy people. I don't think it's bad. I don't think that's that bad at all. Okay. I think we should do that. Well, I think it's exciting, actually.
We are continuing with our development efforts anyway. The player is not slowing other development parts of this plan slow. I guess we can, but I would definitely like to have design discussions. Even with Roger, we haven't had time to look at these 4 functions or more functions that we need as for processing. And I would be happy to do any design reviews on that and plan and continue our development, as I said. And then we can decide what parts of that can be released in 12.1.
Okay. All right. But anyway, what's the story with the interface to machine learning of this stuff?
For video?
Yeah.
That hasn't started yet. But yeah, obviously we want to be able to encode and decode, and there are a lot of scenarios that you would like to combine video and audio tracks and so forth. We haven't planned much of that yet.
I mean, the big concern has been that, let's say that we release this without the player. Will it be mostly a backlash and a negative experience rather than a positive? This is really positive.
I don't know.
It's super good. But is it now, will it generate more of a backlash than a positive?
Okay, so actually, let's ask the folks on our live stream that question.
Yeah.
We have a few responses here with people being pretty interested in this, like being able to analyze brightness per frame and all sorts of things and make a graph and so on. I'm just looking at some of the comments here.
I'm remembering a blog that Teo did a number of years ago where he used some code to create color palette graphs of various Disney movies.
Oh yeah, I remember that for Disney film movies. Yeah, that was in the Touch Press app.
Yeah.
Because I think that, I mean, in my book, this will be a super good 12.2 release, and it will be slightly whimpering.
I think it's nice to bring out some, okay, listen, we could bring it out, but not really tout it. Just make some functions available, let some people know about them, but not really tout them. Not market them.
Development-wise, that would be easier for us because we are in prototype, we're just developing everything in system. So we're just gonna merge to master and release rather than hiding things under video context and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's better that way. A few comments on the live stream. So Ethan is saying image contents needs work and video contents for would be fun. Yep, that's true, but it's a lot of work. Various comments about video formats. Okay. Let's see. Will GIF export be improving? I always have memory and slowness issues, Ethan says.
Yep. So you can
and have to use GIFsicle to optimize them. I don't know what that is. External program of some kind.
But I mean, I think that was already in 12, right? GIF. I mean,
was it?
We've done several improvements to the like animated import and export, both for GIF and PNGs.
Okay. Well, that'd be interesting to know if Ethan has tried what's in 12.0 there. Nicola and Ethan are saying, please parallelize export video frames. Is that doable by us? I mean, is that so? Why wouldn't parallel? I see. So that would be using parallel table and so on to do, well, comments. Is that where would the parallelization? The question is, who does the bit mapping and the encoding to make the video frame, right? And that could perfectly well be done in parallel. Maybe you're already doing that. Shadi, can you comment on that?
For those formats, a lot of these encoders need to be encoded in sequence. We cannot parallelize because each frame depends on the frame before it.
Is that true? I mean, and there isn't a way to parallelize and then to more or less finish and then put some. I mean, because the compression is based on image diffs and things, or what?
Yeah. But in video frames, okay. I think it's referred to as that format that we have video frames. I haven't looked at that. I'll look at it.
Okay. I mean, with all those video formats, you'd have to believe some were parallelizable. He says.
Right. This video frames seems to be just exporting to formats such as PNG, and I think that one can be parallelized. Yes. I'll look.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Bob on the live stream is mentioning the importance of converting all videos to a standardized format. That's what we're doing for images as well. I mean, right, we're going to have a standardized internal representation of videos that will just be consistent, independent of what the external representation is.
Right.
And what is that internal representation? I mean, for images, it's just bitmaps, basically, interleaved in different ways. But what is it for images? Does it have compression by default or not?
Images, no. Images are not compressed. And video,
no, I don't mean images. I'm sorry. Videos.
Our video is always going to be out of core. The data is going to be stored on the disk as it is in the file. And then we're going to be having decoders to read frames out of them, and then encoders to write the result.
I see.
We're not planning on having an in-core video object.
So as I understand it, video frame map, or what might be better called video images map, is basically going to take a function f and apply it to the image that is each decoded frame of the video and produce a result, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
I would recommend something like video images map.
Okay.
Video map images, I don't know, video images map, something like that. Okay, so that I understand how that will work. That's a very cool function. I mean, we should put that in. That's useful whether or not we have I mean, like for example, Teo's analysis of all the Disney movies for that Disney app would be then a one-line thing, basically.
Yeah.
Right. You take the average color of each frame in the movie, and go ahead. Yeah.
But then the thing is that as soon as you want a video images map in the system, you want to have introduced video object, and what's going to be the typesetting of that? How's going to be the playback of that?
A gray blob.
Okay.
will survive.
Okay.
And I think what the gray blob should do is just you click it and it should pull up an external video player, which is pretty civilized because you're not going to want the video. You want a thumbnail anyway, right? You don't want a full screen video, right? Well, you might or might not want a full screen video right in your notebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the question of whether it pulls up to full size in your notebook or outside your notebook seems a secondary issue. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I think it's perfectly fine to just have you click the video player, and for now it will come up as an external video player, and whatever it opens, QuickTime or whatever it opens for you.
Okay.
Okay. So hold on a second. No, in fact, Bob was suggesting the exact same thing I just said. No, actually, what he's suggesting here, which is completely reasonable, is that the video player in the notebook would show a single frame from the video as its thumbnail, which is, of course, a totally reasonable thing. And that's what every video player does. The only difference is when you click that button, does it sing and dance in the notebook or does it bring up another window? And I think it's absolutely fine for it to bring up another window.
Okay.
What will it do in the cloud?
I think this is one project that the player in the cloud is going to be much easier to support.
Yeah, easier.
Yeah, so it'll be immediately an impact.
I mean, the problem with audio player wasn't the playing of audio; it was the GUI style, the elements that the cloud notebooks hadn't yet supported in the GUI.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So in the case of so you guys are going to make a plan with the cloud people to put whatever they can put in there. I'm not sure what the UX is going to be. And it may be remarkably similar UX where you're basically clicking whatever it is. I don't know. But we can prototype the UX there, where the thing initially shows a thumbnail, you click it, it becomes a player in Notebook. You can perhaps resize that player, etc.
Yep.
I sort of don't think that if we go this route, that we're on anywhere, shape, form on a November release at all.
We're not going to hold up the release for video. So get what you can get in there, put it in experimental, whatever you want to do. Let some people play with it, but don't, we're not going to hold up the release for this.
Yep.
Questions here. How about as a file? Yeah, okay. Can one also import a list of images as a video? So in other words, assemble a list of images. It's like a video assemble function. That should work.
That's coming in 12.1, yes.
Okay. That's part of the video encoding thing.
Yep. Same as exporting manipulates to video formats.
Okay. What do you mean same as? You mean that's exporting
the same support. Yeah, exporting of a list of images or exporting a manipulate.
Okay. Nicola on the live stream is saying they parallelize video frames all the time. Just have to define the file names ahead of the export and then use parallel map. So I don't quite understand that.
This is the same video frames format that we talked about. If you open it in the ref page, it's basically exporting a manipulate into a list of PNGs, for instance.
Okay. But there's some parallel map thing to different file names. I'm confused here. Do you understand what's being said here? Where am I looking? Am I looking on a formats page or am I looking at the formats page?
Yes, formats page, video frames.
Video frames, plural?
Yeah. Yes.
New in 8. Wow. I have never used this. I'm sure we've used it plenty of times, but I've never used it. Okay. Okay, Bob is pointing out on the live stream here is that some decoding formats are slower than others and unsuitable for video editing. So some video editors decompress a portion of the video for editing and cache it. And Brian is saying intelligent caching of decoded video frames would help performance hugely. And Nicola is saying video frames will give file names automatically, but it does so sequentially. So I haven't quite understood this thing about parallel versus sequential. I think there's something to understand there. Okay. All right. So look, we're clearly going to have another discussion about this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, subtitle decoders. Well, that's obviously something. Presumably, how are the subtitles stored in a video? Are they stored as metadata or what? Or they're not just composited into the image, are they? I mean, there's a separate closed captioning stream.
Exactly, and it could be multiple of those. Sometimes they're stored as a separate file, but a lot of times it's inside of the video. And yes, it's a separate styled text.
So then there are three tracks. There's the video, there's the audio, and there's separately. So extracting audio from a video, is that something we're going to be able to do easily?
Yes. And there is
Can we already do that? If you, yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
We can already do that as well. And then formats do allow for multiple video tracks, multiple audio tracks, multiple subtitle tracks. One thing design-wise that we have to decide is how much we want to support multiple tracks of each three of those by default. For instance, if our video filter function is working on a video object that has multiple of those tracks, how much do we want to support different functions for different video, audio, subtitle tracks to be possible? Or do we? This is going to get messy. The design.
I don't understand. Why isn't this like layers? Why isn't it like in images? We have an alpha channel. We have this. We have that.
Yeah. So maybe open the video filter ref page in CVS. That's the one that we have spec'd out some. Yeah. Okay. So if you just specify a single function, we could say that we are processing all of the video tracks with that function.
I get it. I understand.
Yeah, and then you can.
Yeah, I understand. So you're going to have to be able to address each track, just like you can address each. What are they called in each channel in an image?
Right.
So I don't see what the problem with that is. I mean, in the case of image, wait a minute. When we map onto images, how do we address the channels there? Can we map onto the alpha channel only?
No. We have never thought about that. We can color separate, color combine while processing just one of those channels, but none of our functions specify the channel.
Maybe that's what we should do with videos as well.
Yeah.
Just separate.
I agree that here in the filtering, maybe it's easier, but then when you start asking for something like sample rate of different audio tracks, or sample rate of audio tracks in a video file, do you always want to get an association or a list of different sample rates for each track, where most of the time the user may be working just with video files that have a single audio object in it? Those are the kinds of things that we probably need to discuss. And I guess video files with multiple audio or subtitle are becoming more and more popular, but video files with multiple video tracks are less popular.
Yeah, I understand, because probably people have translations in the audio of right?
Yeah. Or descriptions, narration, and things like that.
Right. Well, those are coming attraction issues. I mean, I would have thought I don't know. And I mean, I don't know whether the channels in the audio are named, English, French, Russian or something, or whether they are just 1, 2, 3, and you have to know that channel 11
They
is,
could have titles and they could have languages, but none of them are mandatory.
I see.
Both for subtitles and audio tracks, title and language are supported tags.
Okay. All right. Well, this looks very cool. More to discuss about it.
Okay.
Is there anything else for this? I mean, we're clearly run out of time, but I'd like to look at, okay, DICOM OGG. Rename the OGG file format to OGG Vorbis. Okay, fine, but I'm assuming we'll still accept OGG if people OGG us.
OGG is becoming the video format now, the video container. If you specify
What
OGG
the heck?
Vorbis,
I mean,
that's going to be assumed to be an audio format.
Okay, but if you have code right now that reads in an OGG, it's still going to be able to it's eventually going to read in an OGG into a. I mean, what about MP4? Doesn't have the same issue? Or am I confused? Right now, if you import an MP4, do you get its video, which we don't, or do you get its audio track?
In 12, currently we don't support MP4 in 12.0. In 12.1, you're going to be getting a video.
Okay, fine. But we should be able to have an import element for MP4, which is just the audio.
And we do.
Okay, fine. And by the way, this channel business is, we already have a pattern in the import elements for picking out particular channels, like, for, I don't know, HDF and things like this, don't we?
Yes. The sub-element is going to be supported for video as well.
Okay, fine. So, and we should also make sure that we canonicalize languages, and so we can get, a French entity or something, those kinds of things. Okay. Speed improvement bug fixes. Okay, DICOM. Cool. So the next time I get some random CT scan done, hopefully no time particularly soon, I'll be able to read it in here.
DICOM dir is what you want. Then DICOM dir, because those are a whole directory of images.
I see. Previously, I always looked on the disk and pulled out individual DICOM images. And you're saying DICOM dir is the whole bundle, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's when you get MRIs, CTs, those things.
Yeah, but like when you request them from the hospital or whatever, they give you a disk, and the disk has on it some application that is a viewer, right?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I've received them without application on it.
Okay, fair enough. But then usually what I've done, at least I haven't done this for a while, is you go into the directory and you just find the individual raw files and you import them.
Yeah, you can do that.
Right, but you're saying the dir thing would take a whole directory and import it, for example, in the slices. Instead of getting individual slices, normally you import the slices and then you reassemble them into an image 3D. You're saying that this is a way to do that in one step.
Exactly. There is going to be an image 3D element where you can combine all of the sequences in one series. And you can
play with I think the example is my knee that we have.
Okay, good. Hopefully it's recovered since it needed to be.
Yes.
Okay.
Out of all of those, I really think RLE may need attention specifically. That may need a short meeting with Ed Peg and Jose. Jose is here, but
okay. And what about the there's also the what's it called, Golly format? Is that what this is?
That's
or is that
not a part of
format?
this. No, that if anything, that should be a separate format.
Okay, but didn't somebody write a Golly importer? Or if not, I know somebody in the outside world, so to speak, who is prepared to do that.
Okay, we can discuss that.
Yeah, let's discuss that in that discussion. Okay, attachment rules option. What is that?
That's the one that says how to import each of the attachments of an email or exclude them.
What do you mean by each of the attachments? Like a GIF, like a named attachments, or what?
Yeah, we're going to be able to say what element to import from GIF, from WAV, or any other formats. Basically, I've already designed this once in a separate meeting. It's just on the list of
Okay. All right. Okay.
updates.
Well, that's good. That's good because we can use this more generally then.
Yep. There are new versions of those. Yep. The association syntax is going to be very useful. File 1 goes to source
Yes,
1.
definitely. And that create archive, I mean, somehow that relates to file system map and so on, I would think. I mean, that's using the same format. So question, in file system map, there is a mechanism for nested associations to represent nested directories. That should presumably be supported for create archive and extract archive as well.
I see. Currently, we have a flat association, but that file 1, file 2 could have directories in them as well.
Well, let me show you what happens with file system map. Right, with file system map, you can have nested associations. Okay, so the way it works is you give it well, that's really exotic, but anyway, you give it an N here.
Mm-hmm.
So down to level N are represented by nested associations. Okay, so here you see index goes to this. That's, oh yeah, there. You see a directory going to the individual files. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, because you've given a certain level spec here, this is now flattening it to use the directory delimiter instead.
Okay.
Okay, with the individual keys with directory delimiter. But I think it would be very useful to be able to, if you're extracting from a whole nested, you've got a whole nested subdirectory structure, zip it up, by specifying something like this. That makes sense?
Yep. Let me look at it. I think extract archive is going to benefit more from this than create archive.
Oh, I agree completely. Extract archive would be, yeah, I mean, extract archive. So here's a piece of here's an operation. So one of the questions is, file system map is used to mapping over an external file system, right? Now, let's say you do extract archive and you get the contents of a whole bunch of files arranged in this hierarchical directory fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right now, file system map only expects to operate on an external file system. And we don't have a good way of doing the mapping of this ragged nested association structure, right? Mm-hmm. But I wonder whether file system map should actually be able to be given essentially an in-memory, association nested association structure that it could do its same operations on. Right. So right now, file system map is going in and, well, actually, I think it's just being given the file names. But I don't. You see what I'm saying? So I mean, I'm saying the question is, one thing you can do is extract onto the disk. You get a bunch of files. You go and just do. And I don't even know how you do that. I mean, we don't have a function right now that does an unzip on the disk, right? An out of core. We don't have an out of core extract archive, right? But if we did an out of core extract archive and then we pass the results to file system map, it would be a happy thing. Right now, what we have here is an extract archive into core. Right?
Well, what we do have, extract archive cannot return the file hierarchy, but import of archive formats can give you file names, and those file names could be nested. I think that's what you're.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be quite right, because if you look at the association, its keys are the file names. So what you want, why can't extract archive extract to a nested key structure, a nested association structure?
It could.
I think it should. I mean, otherwise it's losing information. What's it going to do otherwise?
It's just a flat list.
But I think
And I
that's
agree.
wrong.
I think the nested, yeah, scroll down to the examples. I agree that nested, it's going to be backwards incompatible, but if you're, and this goes back to version 8.
Well, I think that what we can do there, look, worst case is it's changing the default, because file system map, if you say infinity here, then that's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, it's never going to be the same thing, because I'm sure in version 8, it was returning a list of rules, not an association, right? Am I making sense? What is it returning here? What the heck is it returning? That's just returning file names. Okay, I'm confused. We need to look at this. What is that doing? It's just returning a bunch of file names.
This is extracting an archive and then saving the content into the current directory.
Oh, wow. So extract archive is very, okay. All right, fine. So my statement about how...
Still, the result could be a nested association.
No, it doesn't need to be. There's no point in it being a nested association unless extract archive, it's pointless. This is fine. Then you do file system map across this, I think. But this is turning it into a nested directory structure as specified in the archive.
Exactly.
Okay, we need to have a quick look at these again. But you should make sure that it's compatible with file system map.
Yep.
Compression level, I'm not sure that level is the right term, because isn't it a number like 0.9 or something?
Exactly, yes. That's a 0 to 9 scale typically.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, so it is a level, like zoom level or something. It's an arbitrary scale.
Correct. We have had that
Brian
as
on our live stream.
We have had compression level.
Yeah.
Sorry, as a string.
I know, as a sub-method option, right? Brian on our live stream points out that things like tar support symbolic links. Which I don't know how we're dealing with. Also, is there a question, don't some of these things, I don't know if the zip allows this, doesn't zip allow you to have keys, authentication keys?
Password?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to run.
I've also got to run. Okay, I think we've got a little bit more this stuff, utilities here. I absolutely put them in the function repository.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Please do that. I don't know what canonicalized format does.
That's like JPG becomes JPEG.
Then call it for format name.
Okay.
So wait a minute. The authentication option for zip would be work through our authentication option. Is that correct?
That's not how we're doing it now. We have been discussing if we are working with things on servers that need username and password, those as well may need authentication. And we need to have a way of specifying the file password separately from the username password of the server.
Okay, fine. But use the authentication option.
Right.
Use the authentication option. The authentication option gives you
different keys for those, separate keys for the file password.
It has very rich ability to specify different kinds of things, because there are all kinds of wild things you might want to specify on authentication. It can handle that, I think. But you should talk to, I mean, the probably Brad Ashby is the expert in that.
Okay.
Okay, but please use the authentication option, because if you use that, also things like our system keychain functionality will all work with it, and so on and so on and so on.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yep.
And I was going to make one more point here. Oh, on our live stream, Ethan is pointing out the archives made on Mac OS and Linux have issues decompressing each other at times. I don't know about that. Is that that's not in the modern world? Endianness has become standardized, hasn't it? Pretty much, and things like that. Is there an endianness issue with zips? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't think
that's
so.
a question, and that. What's that?
I said I don't think so.
Okay. So, anybody know anything about that? Well, it's just an issue. Okay. Ethan is saying, it'd be nice to support formats like RAR, R-A-R.
Yep. Okay.
Is that in the plan? I've certainly seen that
No.
format around.
Not the immediate.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's a format I've certainly seen around.
Yep.
Okay. Well, sorry, we're not going to be able to get to what was the other thing we're going to discuss today? Graphics and
geometry and graphics.
Okay. Apologies to those people. I will have to put that on Monday. I have a difficult travel-intensive week next week, and I think let's try and push it onto Monday in some way. So if we could get that message to Emma and such like, that would be good.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you all very much. Thank you to folks on the live stream. A lot of great comments. Much appreciated. And see you all soon.
Yep. Thanks, Stephen.